One of the big problems in the church today, and we've seen this on a massive scale. In fact, I've written another book with a fellow Baptist pastor called Defending Conscience, which we tackled some of that in this book. And that is the fact that government authorities often are corrupt. And the church doesn't recognize it. And so a few years ago, we had a serious crisis across the world, really, in most countries. But particularly in former Protestant countries, evangelical countries, this was a massive problem where the government was taking powers which were beyond its purview and beyond actual stated principles of their legal systems. And the church was just like Romans 13, Romans 13, Romans 13. And what I found frustrating about that is suddenly everybody went from basically, I can just do what I want and not have to worry about the government, to becoming experts on the fact that the government has authority to do whatever it wants because of one passage in the Bible. But the idea that there is just one passage in the Bible about the way kings and rulers work in this world is ridiculous. We have 2 books in the Bible with the word kings directly in the title, 1 and 2 Kings. We've got 1 and 2 Chronicles. We've got the books of Judges. We've got massive parts of Exodus, Genesis, all these books and many prophets which actually look at the way kings work in this world. And one of the things that you'll find in the scriptures, and one of the things you'll find if you go into politics, so I'm told, because I haven't actually gone into politics, but I have many friends and colleagues in that sphere, is that the more you get involved, the more corruption you see. And what's fascinating is the Bible shows us that it's more likely for leaders to be corrupt than to be good. And this doesn't mean we need to go around slandering or attacking our leaders all the time. The Bible actually does say to pray for our leaders. But one of the reasons it tells us to pray for our leaders is because it's assuming that our leaders will be wicked. It's assuming that. You know, when Paul wrote Romans 13, he was assuming that the emperor was not the good guy. He wrote that in the context, and I was thinking about this the other day, it's actually really powerful. Paul wrote Romans in probably the 50s or 60s, but he's thinking in the context of rebellions that are rising up in Judea and which would spill out into the wars of the Jews. And what was the Judaizers, their response to the Romans was what? It was rebellion. But Jesus said, no, when you see this building up, flee. And so what I'm bringing up here is this context is that the Bible has a rich theology and a rich discussion of how leaders act. And the fact that so many Christians are not aware of that meant that they were just taken advantage of like a bunch of fools when the government wanted to take power. And we see this in society after society. Again, Solzhenitsyn writes about this. He talks about how the church just said, no, trust your leaders, and then they got communist Russia as a result. You know, this is a pattern in history. It is a powerful pattern that we need to recognize, and it's taught in the scriptures. We actually see in the scriptures again and again and again that corruption is the norm. In fact, what do they say? One of the core principles of democracy is, what is it? It's compromise, all right? Now that is an interesting word because compromise is something that husbands and wives need to do to deal with stuff sometimes, but it's also a word which is referring to corruption. And it can go either way, and it happens a lot. And so the fact that Christians are not aware of this comes from an underdeveloped understanding of the theology of leadership in the Bible. And I see this problem not just in the way that Christians deal with political leaders, but even evangelical leaders in the church. One of the things I say in that chapter, and this is really important, is you should not trust. The Bible actually doesn't ever say trust your governmental leaders. Or I don't even know if it says trust your other leaders. It says to honor them, and that's a big difference. You honor them because of their position, but you don't put yourself in their power in an unnecessary way and pretend that they're always out for your good. They have to earn that. They have to earn that. And this chapter really discusses why that's important.